It's early 2025, and by now you've probably seen countless top 10 horror films of 2024 lists from your favorite YouTubers and podcasts. They've raved about hits like The Substance, a body horror masterpiece, Nosferatu, a chilling gothic revival, Alien Romulus, a pulse-pounding sci-fi thriller, and Longlegs, a psychological nightmare. These films have been dissected and praised endlessly, leaving no detail unexplored. But here's the thing, while those movies are fantastic, I've spent the last year diving deep into the wild world of horror, exploring everything from slashers to supernatural chills, to uncover the films that truly caught me off guard. These are the hidden gems and under-the-radar releases that either blew past my expectations or got buried under lackluster marketing, robbing them of a spotlight that they deserved. So, grab a seat and get ready for a fresh take on 2024's horror scene. I'm about to share my list of the biggest horror surprises of the year, movies that shocked, thrilled, and filled me with dread and terror. Let's dive in. In 2024, a familiar franchise clawed its way from hell and back to the big screen with Hellboy the Crooked Man, a bold reboot of the demon hero fans thought that they knew. But let's be real, this film was swimming against the current from the start. Die-hard fans of Del Toro's early 2000s Hellboy masterpieces had been holding out for a proper Hellboy 3, not another reset, and then there's the shadow of David Harbour's 2019 Hellboy reboot, a misfire that left a sour taste in everyone's mouth.
He's an asshole.
So yeah, this new take was stepping into a minefield, destined to be measured against its predecessors, whether it liked it or not. Here's the twist though, reinvention is the lifeblood of comic books, where Hellboy was born. Different writers and artists can jump in, tweaking a character's story or look from one issue to the next. It's chaotic, but it works. Movies though? That's a tougher sell. Audiences and studios don't exactly roll out the welcome mat for that kind of shakeup. Picture this, Marvel drops Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a massive hit, and then a few years later, out comes a brand new Spider-Man flick with a totally different cast, director, and style. You'd probably feel a little cheated, like, wait, what happened to the sequel I was waiting for? That's the exact gauntlet Hellboy the Crooked Man had to run, delivering something fresh without alienating a fanbase already on edge. The marketing was subtle to say the least, and the film released internationally to little praise. And worse off, the film went straight to video on demand in America. Despite my initial doubts, especially after spotting some shaky CGI in the trailers, Hellboy the Crooked Man won me over. Sure, the effects stumble at times, but they're far from a disaster, and honestly, this film has more of an excuse than some bloated comic book blockbusters with budgets 20 times its size. Just when you're tempted to check out, it hooks you with a 1-2 punch of creepy gothic chills and electrifying action. Unlike its predecessors, this Hellboy keeps the plot tight and personal, giving its oddball ensemble room to shine. Jack Kesey's Hellboy occasionally echoes Ron Perlman's gruff charm.
Excuse me?
But it's never a distraction, more like a respectful nod. The supporting cast consists of Lee McNamara, who tantalizes as Effie Kolb, a sultry witch luring villagers to the dark side, while Joseph Marcel's Reverend Watts, a blind priest, dishes out holy wrath with a Bible in one hand and a weapon in the other. The real star though, Martin Bassendale as the Crooked Man, a soul-collecting demon with a twisted deal of his own. Brought to life with practical effects, his eerie look and unsettling wheeze, courtesy of stellar sound design, make him a standout villain, far from your typical horned cliché. He's a perfect match for Hellboy and the BPRD. The film peaks with a wild siege scene, where our heroes fend off an undead swarm in a remote chapel, pure pulse-pounding chaos, perfect for a bowl of popcorn. It's not flawless, and the box office flop makes a sequel unlikely, but there's enough here to warrant a watch. If you're up for a gritty gothic horror flick that punches above its weight, hunt this one down and drop me your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about a horror movie that probably flew under your radar in 2024, and maybe still has in 2025, Beazle. No A-list stars, no big budget buzz, just a passion project from director Aaron Fradkin, a shorts filmmaker who turned his childhood home into a hellish playground. I'll be upfront, it's my least favorite on this entire video, but don't sleep on it yet. Beazle packs a surprising punch with its thick atmosphere and killer framing. Fradkin draws from his own childhood nightmares to spin a tale of a New England house plagued by a wall-dwelling witch, tormenting its residents for over 60 years. It's told anthology style through 3 different viewpoints. It's uneven, the last chunk drags despite some chills, but the early segments, they're pure slow burn terror that'll have you hooked. Fradkin nails a less is more approach, using dim lighting and slow builds to keep you scanning the shadows, heart pounding, then BAM! A visual gut punch that'll launch you off your couch. And you can feel his love for Sam Raimi in this one. Think Evil Dead vibes with clever borrowed shots that pay homage without ripping off. It's rough around the edges, but Beazle proves Fradkin something to keep an eye out for in the future. My favorite part of Beazle? Hands down, it's the segment with an in-home nurse tending to an elderly disabled woman in that cursed home. The nurse is a gem. She's kind, she's caring, she's totally unprepared for the nightmare ahead. Her patient's mostly out of it, muttering creepy gibberish and letting out guttural groans. As the night creeps on, weird sounds build into a full-on paranormal chaos, exploding into a moment that'll have you yelling, "Why would you do that?" at the screen. If you dive into this one, keep your expectations in check. Again, it's rough around the edges, but let me know in the comments which segment stole the show for you. Our third film comes straight from the twisted minds at IFC Films and Shudder, 2 outfits that have spent the last few years churning out some of the most intriguing, boundary-pushing horror content. Think films like Speak No Evil or When Evil Lurks vibes. Their latest, Azrael, dropped in 2024 with an ultra-limited theatrical run that barely made a ripple, pulling in a measly $617,000 at the box office. Was it the marketing team that dropped the ball? Or maybe the film's bold gimmick scared off the masses? Whatever the case, Azrael isn't your typical horror flick. It's a near-silent descent into dread, clocking in with less than 5 minutes of spoken dialogue across its entire runtime. The first whispered words don't even hit until 36 minutes into the film. If you're a Samara Weaving fanatic hoping to hear her unleash those iconic glass-shattering screams from Ready or Not, you're out of luck. But don't write this off yet. What it lacks in verbal exposition, it more than makes up for with a hauntingly crafted world and jaw-dropping design that'll stick with you long after the credits roll. It's set on a post-Rapture Earth. Azrael plunges us into a bleak, unforgiving landscape where survival's the only game in town. Weaving plays the titular Azrael, a fierce yet voiceless woman banished alongside her lover from a deranged survivor cult. This isn't your run-of-the-mill religious sect. These fanatics believe speech itself is a sin, so they've surgically ripped out their vocal cords, leaving behind an eerie mute existence, making their intentions even more unpredictable. But the cult's forced hideouts are just the start of the nightmare. Roaming the wilds are the Burned Ones, grotesque, demonic zombies with blackened, charred flesh, blind as bats, but deadly precise with their heightened smell and hearing. They're flesh-hungry hunters, and every snapped twig or stifled breath could be a death sentence. The film shot in the misty, towering pines of Perispia, Estonia, and the location's a character all on its own. Those endless trees loom over ramshackle colonies built from scavenged scraps of a shattered world. Inside these camps, you'll spot crude wooden chapels adorned with New Age religious icons, painted with a rough, almost desperate hand. It's like Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, reimagined by survivors, clinging to faith after heaven's turned its back. The film doesn't just show you this world, it dares you and its characters to confront the raw existential question: how far would you go to keep breathing when you're nothing but God's leftovers? Now, I get it, the no dialogue thing might sound like a deal breaker. I personally was not sold on 2023's No One Will Save You with a similar concept, but Azrael is a different beast. Heart-pounding action sequences that'll have you sitting on the edge of your seat, special effects that bring those burn ones to life in all of their grotesque glory, and a cast that sells every silent scream and desperate glance, Samara Weaving, even without her voice, commands the screen with her feral intensity and thirst for revenge. While the supporting players flesh out the grim universe with haunting authenticity, the lack of words forces you to lean in, to feel the weight of every rustle and shadow. So if you're on the fence about this one, let me ease your doubts. Azrael isn't just a gimmick, it's a visceral, atmospheric ride that proves silence can be scarier than any monster's roar. Don't get left behind with the rest of humanity. Track this one down and tell me what you think in the comments. Now, let's dive into my fourth and final pick, a film that might have been sold short by its labeling as a terrifying horror film. Cuckoo hit theaters in 2024, billed as a straight-up horror, but trust me, it's so much more. A slick, twisted sci-fi horror hybrid that's firing on all cylinders. I'll never forget catching the trailer in a packed theater, those eerie visuals and pulsing beats. It had me hooked instantly. So I bolted home, scouring the web for every scrap of info I could find on this upcoming release. Then the early reviews trickled in. It hovered around a rotten 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and my excitement plummeted. I grumbled to a few of my friends that it's probably just a middling flick with an Oscar-worthy trailer. But here's the kicker. Those deflated expectations might have been Cuckoo's secret weapon, letting it sneak up and blow me away. Starring Hunter Schafer from Euphoria as Gretchen, a grieving teen wrestling with her mom's death and a jarring move to a remote Bavarian Alps town with her fractured family. And Dan Stevens, he's horror royalty from The Guest and Abigail, as Herr Koenig, a smooth-talking German entrepreneur, dripping with menace and a devilish grin. This cast is electric. The town itself, it's got that unshakable Twin Peaks weirdness. Nothing's outright evil, but everything's off kilter. Like the locals are all in on some cosmic joke, and Gretchen's the only one not laughing. From the moment Gretchen's family rolls into the Bavarian town, the air thickens with a creeping dread that coils tighter with every passing minute. It's a slow, suffocating build, like the opening of Alien, where the Nostromo crew first senses something's off, but can't name what it is. Strange omens strike fast. Women vomiting in the hotel lobby, their faces pale with unspoken terror. Gretchen's half-sister Alma suffering seizures sparked by a piercing, otherworldly shriek that echoes through the pines. And a grim detective prowling the streets, chasing whispers of murders tied to a hooded figure who melts into the shadows. Gretchen's already a ghost of herself, clutching fading memories of her dead mom like a lifeline in this peculiar town, forced to play at normalcy behind the hotel's dead-end front desk job. Then Ed crashes into her life, Astrid Burgess Frisbee radiating a punk rock edge sharper than a switchblade. Their bond ignites fast, a desperate spark in the gloom, and soon they're tearing towards the airport with the radio blasting and talks about how they'll create their new life, chasing a fleeting dream of escape. But the night has teeth. A bone-chilling encounter with the hooded specter slams the brakes on their plan, hurling Gretchen into an abyss of secrets festering beneath the town's skin. She's cornered, forced to claw through the mystery or be swallowed by it. Here's where it gets wild. Sure, Herr Koenig, Dan Stevens' serpentine mastermind, looms as the human threat, but there's a creature, a paranormal enigma, that tips this into sci-fi territory. Forget your campfire demons or slashers. This thing's more akin to The Thing's shape-shifting terror or Annihilation Shimmering. An unknowable mutant, a force of murky origins, its havoc tied to this warped environment rather than some malevolent grudge. And there's a shiver-inducing hint it's locked onto Gretchen and her family, its motives personal, adding a layer of mystery that keeps you guessing. Cuckoo takes you on a roller coaster of wild twists, but it's sharp enough to tie up most loose ends without losing you into chaos. The script, penned by writer-director Tillman Singer, unfolds like a slow drip IV, deliberate, tense, and never boring, peeling back the layers of the bizarre world bit by bit. Visually, it's a stunner. The Bavarian Alps tower over the story with jagged peaks and misty valleys like sentinels, a silent conspirator in the chaos, while the town's quirky architecture feels like a character itself, all odd angles and old world charm twisted into something uncanny. The cast banter is razor-witted, every line a breadcrumb leading you deeper into the madness. Horrors woven throughout the whole thing. Think monster chases that'll spike your pulse, car wrecks that hit like a punch, levitating bodies defying gravity, and shady figures with agendas you can't quite pin down. Gretchen herself, she's no invincible final girl with plot armor superpowers. Schaefer plays her raw and real. She's battered, bandaged, bruised, and bloodied by the end, taking a brutal beating from this town and its secrets. Yet, she's relentless, clawing her way towards survival and freedom with her family in tow. The punk rock soundtrack, gritty, rebellious, and perfectly synced with Singer's vibe, amps up the attitude, matching the film's do-it-yourself spirit. Here's my bold prediction. In a decade, cinephiles will dig out Cuckoo out of the 2024 rubble and hail it as an underrated masterpiece, misunderstood in its time. But you and I, we're ahead of the curve, armed with the heads up that this isn't just horror, it's a sci-fi thrill ride with teeth. Watch it, soak it in, and fight along Gretchen in this thrill ride. As 2024's shadow stretches thin, these 4 films, Hellboy the Crooked Man, Beazle, Azrael, and Cuckoo, slip through the cracks to seize me in ways I never saw coming. Hellboy the Crooked Man hurled me into a gothic comic book tale, defying every reservation I carried. Beazle whispered its way in next, a patchwork of nightmares stitched from a filmmaker's haunted past, erupting into a cacophony of dread. Azrael followed, stripping away words to plunge me into a post-raptured void, Samara Weaving's silent scream carving through a world of charred horrors, with every muted step a tightening noose. And Cuckoo, it lured me in with Bavarian whispers, only to unleash a sci-fi nightmare. All of these films are pulse-pounding surprises that defy the ordinary, lurking in the corners of a year packed with bigger names, so don't let them slip away. Hunt them down on your next dark night, feel the chills they've got in store, and then race back here to YouTube. The darkness is calling, and we're not done yet. So hit the subscribe button for more videos, and leave a like or comment if this video turned you on to a new watch. The unknown's waiting, and we're diving in deeper together. Just remember, we love you so much, it's scary.